And thanks everybody for coming out. Uh, and it's been a great, I'm so glad that so many different towns and areas and that Northfield decided to do this. I'm sorry that in terms of as we all know, if you're out there performing, the virus has really taken out a major chunk on our daily lives and also all for those who are performers being able to perform. I still, from my venues that I talk to, they say sometime in next spring. Nobody's seeing the fall happening. I do my fall festival, and that's not going to be happening this year. Unfortunately, I hope to do something online, but not to go too far into that. You can see lots of stuff that I do on humanerrorpublishing.com. I am a publisher also, so you'll see a whole bunch of authors there also. And I do have a YouTube channel that has a lot of great videos of other performers and myself solo and with this group called Do It Now. I have a new book coming out. It's not out yet. It's going to be called The 24-Hour Store Was Closed. So I don't have a book part from it, but I'm going to read just a couple pieces from that and then some other things that people may have heard. So let's start with this one. Let me close this out here. This is the first time, I don't know if folks who are writers out there, I haven't done this too much where I take an object or just something and then write a couple different stanzas about that object that became kind of a prompt. And so the prompt this time was called a bell. A bell showed up and then these sections happened. On seeing what looked like a small bell sitting on the table, you remember a bookstore, a cafe, a small bell above the door that rang each time the door was open and closed. You were there with your love. They bought you a book. You ate yummy desserts, drank lots of coffee. The book sits on a shelf, never read. Many years later, it's just you and the book. 2. A bell. It was late at night. The clown sneaked into the lion's performing cage, which was empty. Everyone had gone to sleep, including the lions. The clown imagined hearing the cheering crowds, the roar of the lions, and started to perform. Everyone kept asking why on this particular night that the clown had went into the cage. Let's see here, I'm gonna move this over. That the lions had not been fed, that the drunk lion keeper had not closed the gate. Between the lion's cage and where they performed and where they stayed, the door was open. The clown was yelling commands now to the cheering crowds, which woke the lions, and them being hungry and restless, they went to check out and investigate what was going on. The clown was never seen again. Either were the lions. The door to the performance cage was open. There was no sign of what happened besides only one of the clown's bells that was found in the hay. 3. It looked like a bell, actually a valuable part in a mechanical device that breaks. There is a large box, must be hundreds of them, found at a tag sale. On the table with a sign that says 3 cents each. Only having $10, you want them all. You consider grabbing the box and running. You decide instead to muster up your best. I'm paying too much for this, but here, I'll give you $10 for the whole thing. The $10 is snatched out of your hand, just in case you might change your mind. You pick up the large box. You know that they are selling on eBay for $36 each. You keep up this act. I don't know why I bought these, and you walk off dreaming of being rich. The son who is running the table says, "Pa, what's he going to do with all those things?" And the father says, "Hell do I know, but put out another box and don't put out so many of them this time." 4. I became hypnotized. The 1-year-old was, I'll start that over again. I became hypnotized. The 1-year-old just held the tiny bell in its hand. The parents yelled at me later. They could have choked on it. They put everything in their mouths. You don't give a 1-year-old a small item to play with. It was just a small bell. being held with tiny fingers, eyes wide open, staring at what was between their fingers, turning their head this way and that. Every so often, the amazement, watching. I told myself I needed to be reminded of all the amazements. This is one, I'll go to paper now instead of trying to negotiate on a computer. This will give a little sense of my growing up with my mom, who had lots of various experiences, I would say, with the other world. It's scary out there. My mom saw a man's suit coming down the hallway. She recognized the suit. It belonged to her stepdad. She loved her stepdad. She ironed and cleaned that suit every night and hung it up. She loved him and she loved the suit. She was scared as the suit was following her down the hallway. The suit was literally headless, no arms, feet, just a floating suit. She was scared. My mother had antennae that picked up messages not always clear. Someone was going to have a broken arm. She would keep me and my brother in. A phone call would let her know a cousin broke his arm. Then we could go out. She told me the suit scared her, for it said nothing to her. There was no messages. What did it want? It appeared several times to her. She knew her stepdad was visiting. What did he want? It scared her. Once it followed her into the bedroom. She got into bed and pulled the covers over her head. It was unclear what happened next, but she found herself all wrapped up in the covers very tightly, not being able to move. She said it took her a while to calm down and unroll herself free. She said, I guess we should have had these conversations earlier. I didn't realize you and your brother are having experiences. We acknowledged the house I grew up in had a dark force living there. When I told her I was scared to be left alone there, she said she wished she'd known. She acknowledged the fear. It is calm in her new house. On walking into a room full of people, within a few moments, she would pull me aside and tell me who in the room was going to rip me off. I needed to stay away from those people. If she had time, she would pin a red ribbon on the inside of my shirt or coat. It was to help ward off bad energy. She would say, try to be like a mirror. Reflect. Reflect all the hate. Reflect the hate back to hate. Let the hate destroy itself. She had warned everyone in our family at one time or another. My father at first didn't listen. He was ripped off many times by people she had pointed out. Later in the marriage, he would avoid them. She said sometimes, you just have to accept what is given, and you are always asking for more. I said to her, that's what you had told me to do. She said, did you have to listen to everything I said? There are many things, she said. There are many things we couldn't talk about. Once it was okay to share these experiences, she listened with intent. I told her of my experiences. She told me she had prayed to not have these experiences. They scared her. They can be scary. They can be confusing. Some question whether or not they are real. These days, I have a hard time believing what I'm told. What I hear scares me. I don't know how much praying is going to help. I am willing to try just about anything in the hopes for future generations. Get a little water here. I also write, I guess you could say, stories. In one of my festivals, or in one festival I've had a couple times, 5-minute true stories. And then we played around with saying, why don't you do a story that has some truths in it, but is not necessarily totally true. So this is what this one is. Once upon a time. The question is this a true story? Well, I can tell you what is true. I had long hair like I do now. I owned a pair of white earth shoes. I went out west several times. I hitchhiked. I took buses, drove in vehicles that would overheat. I was a juggler. I knew many people who had to hide their sexuality. A white supremacist said he wanted to kill me. I had many girlfriends who weren't interested in me. And I was asked, how many times was I going to squeeze those babies? So, with that in mind, this is the story. She said to me, I'm feeling really desperate, and looking at you, I realize how desperate I am. In these types of experiences, that can damage you emotionally for life. Luckily, I was given the vaccine at an early age. She explained she needed me to go to a family gathering out west. We were to act like we were two heterosexuals madly in love, and on seeing this, her family, who were rich, would give her money. The family event was 3 days long. I would stay at a fancy resort, all the food and drinks I could consume. We would share a room. I could fondle all I wanted at given time periods, no intercourse. Since I was on the road and eating had been slim and I was ready to fondle, I told myself I was in love. This is 1970. She had no interest in men, didn't want to explain her sexuality to her family. She didn't want to go alone and have to endure all the aunts with their friends who had cousins, such nice boys who had no interest in girls, but no one knew that yet. As she looked me over, she said her father would probably want to pay me to have me disappear. I would get a percentage of the money, depending on my bargaining skills, or otherwise, she would get the money and I would get bus fare. We had to travel to California in an Opel Cadet that could only go 45 miles an hour top speed, otherwise it overheated. This gave us more than enough time to really test our acting skills of being two lovers madly in love. During these rehearsals, she tried to kill me. Once in Nebraska at an abandoned campground, once in the desert after we ran out of gas, and once in the parking lot of the resort. Luckily, a cousin arrived as she had me on the hood of the car with her arms around my neck, strangling me. She smiled, stepped down, and said to them, he likes it rough. Her father did hint of money immediately. Her sister was giving me the eye, but there was no interest there. The family was willing to have anyone take her away. There was a brother who was a white supremacist, always giving me the finger and mouthing from across the room, you are dead. On the first night, I obviously had too much to drink, and I tried to juggle some homemade torches. Luckily, with the fast response of the staff, they quickly put out the fire and saved part of the tent. Fondling was supposed to be part of the deal, but after a short time, she said to me, I had to let go of her breasts. She couldn't believe anybody would want to squeeze those babies that much. I was offered money before the next morning. I negotiated a few drinks. I was given bus fare. Her uncle was a police officer who made it clear I wanted to get on the bus. On getting on the bus, as the story goes, the only open seat was next to a woman who, as I approached, asked that I don't sit down there. After 11-hour bus ride, we lived together for 3 months. Another various prompts happen. I was asked by a woman who collects photos from old family, from houses, and that, boxes and boxes of grandma and the dog and beach trips and birthday parties and you name it. And she had boxes and boxes and boxes of these that people had, families had just thrown out, but she got them and she would set them around a studio, dump them all out, and she would ask writers to come in and pick maybe 6 or 7 or 8 of these photos and then write a quick story, and then there would be a gallery and the writers would read the story from the photos. So these are the photos that I found laying around in the boxes. First off, you're only looking at the back of the legs of 3 women standing. 2 of them are wearing white socks, and 1 woman is wearing black socks. You're looking at a woman bending forward in a very low-cut gown. There's a dog, number 3 is a dog is sitting in the yard called Jasper. Some of these photos had names on the back. A pool with people around it, and a man in the pool dunking a child called Baptism. A family on the front yard and the father throwing a baby up into the air. 6, a woman with her back to the camera wearing a really big hat. 7 was a series of pictures, like there was 5 in this square, and they were all of 3 men standing together. All the men were different, and yet the names on the back of each of those sections, there was one that was the same, and all of them was identified as Dick. Then 8 was 3 men are in the picture. 1 of them is on a motorbike, and the other 2 men are standing next to the bike out in the woods. So those are the 8 photos. This is the story. The story is obviously about the past, since we don't take pictures of the future. It is also about a healing. First, let me set one thing straight. My name is Richard and not Dick. As a child, I had no memory of my father throwing me into the air, probably due to the number of times he didn't catch me. It only came back later in therapy sessions of why I had a fear of flying. Next, I want to talk about our dog, Jasper. He looked so cute in those pictures. The shelter hadn't told us he was a fugitive from 4 states for biting children. He ate anything smaller than him, and his earlier career was part of being a CIA attack dog. I will never forget that first night my parents locked me and Jasper in my bedroom so we could get acquainted. Probably another reason for my fear of flying, since I jumped from the 2nd floor window. As a kid, I didn't have many friends, so I was thrilled when Billy invited me over to his house to swim in his pool. Once in the water, I was told I was going to be baptized. I realized later this is where I got my fear of someone trying to drown me. As a young man, I bought a motorbike. My mother thought it was because I loved to ride in the country far away from people. This police photo of me on the motorbike with 2 guys dealing contraband in the woods exposes the truth. From an early age, Aunt Mabel would always come up to me, bend forward with her breasts in my face, and then ask me what color were her eyes. This became a sore spot with many future lovers. I never knew what color their eyes were. My first girlfriend was the one wearing the black socks. Everyone wore white socks, and on seeing those black socks, I was sure she was the one for me. But then I met the woman with the hat. I love that hat. I had 3 other lovers who wore the same hat. Finally, I bought the hat myself and saved a lot of people a lot of pain. In my healing work, I have created a small altar where I sit in front of the pair of black socks and the hat and Jasper's head that I had mounted and stuffed. And I do my my daily mantra. My name is Richard. I'm not a Dick. This one will be, let's see, how am I doing on time here? Okay. This one, I do a bunch of stuff with musicians and some video folks also. I'm going to redo this one. I did it recently, John Sheldon and Tony Vaca, and it was called Secret Agent, but I just got rewritten and re-recorded, so it'll be coming out soon. So here we go with this. Let me get another quick little drink here. It looks like it's raining, folks. If it's raining, hooray for the garden. It's not, I mean, it's sprinkling. It's not raining, but it is something out here, and we are televising from New England, Massachusetts. Secret Agent. Secret Agent 7573247DB65. I'm on a mission. You're probably wondering what it is. It was a secret to me for many years. I learned I was to investigate myself. I found out I was one of many main characters in this story. I have met many main characters. Some are boring. I enjoy the crazy ones. All the stories have something in common. We all looking for clues. I'm asked, what did you find while investigating yourself? Are you a superhero? Did you find a cape in your closet? Some fear the ending of this story. I'm hoping for the best. I continue to search for clues inside and out. I'd like to tell you I figured it out so then we could wrap up this story. Many don't want to hear that there are many different endings. The story keeps going with us or without us. Accepting that we're going to lose all the main characters, I try to tell myself to remain calm as I look into the mirror. 7576B6590? Did I get those numbers wrong? Did I just create a new identity? We all know what that means. When you start changing, you change the whole story. Many worry that could be the beginning of the end. I have 5 different books out, and this one will be coming out soon. Let me just check here. I'll grab one from here. Thanks everybody for coming out. I can see the folks on there. A quick, Father's Day was just here, so this is called Snow Shovel. It's snowing a couple of inches now, more on the way, and I'm here with my parents, hoping I'll be able to drive home tomorrow. One can get stuck in Buffalo, where the lake effect. When no one else has snow, there's tons of it here. I asked my father, who's 86 years old, does he have a snow shovel? He says happily, yes, it's on the porch. I go look. There's an old snow shovel, all bent up, handle about to fall off. Not much of a snow shovel left. I ask if there are any others. No. He has helped me many times in my life. My father doesn't do much shoveling these days. This shovel reminds me of him. He is old, all bent up, not much left. And when I asked if there was another shovel, and when he said no, I agree. There just isn't another one of him. I guess I'll read this one. This was published in another journal, published in this book. I came here in 79, and I was living down in Cummington for a while, and then Haydenville, and a friend of mine kept saying that Northampton was a place to come to. There was all these artists here. I had been traveling around the country over the years, and so I came here. Then he turned out he went to New York City. Because he was feeling like it wasn't happening here. But so this is a little bit about that, and it was about this time period of artists, and it's called Northampton and What About the Artists. It was 1979. I pulled into Haydenville in a VW camper. I camped in a friend's driveway. He had told me to come out from Buffalo, New York, that this is where it was all happening for the artist. He had a studio in Florence. This is when the Iron Horse was only one little storefront. They had on the wall, "May the arts live." Later, musicians would complain, how are the artists supposed to live? I was performing juggling in the streets. One day, I was informed that the International Juggling Festival was happening at Hampshire College. I walked into a room of people throwing things in the air and at each other. I became a professional juggler. Making my living for more than 20 years, I would be a part of many of the first nights. I would perform at various events, and twice at the really big show on the Academy of Music, where on the stage one could feel and smell in the curtains all the great acts that had been there. There were many jugglers in the area. We would meet in Pulaski Park. When the state closed down the mental institution, the audience became more interesting, and the streets seemed sadder. And when wandering around With nowhere to go, there were still many affordable studio spaces. This would soon change as the city became the hip place to be, as Smith College no longer worried about being lesbian Mecca. New restaurants opened and closed, and new restaurants opened and closed, and new restaurants opened and closed. New businesses came and went, and the rents kept climbing. Before they did, there was theater in the streets, in abandoned storefronts. Creativity poured into the streets from alleyways. A Vanguard movie house opened, coffee houses, dancing the night away, a dance spree. There were hovels known as bars that gave some of the greatest bands in the area a crowdy, sweaty religious experience. Then soon would be cleaned up, made into hip clubs, lost the edge. Now it would take someone a few weeks to eat in all the restaurants. Hip shops continue to open. As prices go up, the wandering lost people seem to have wandered somewhere else. There is still the street musician here and there, and those that ask for spare change. And the venues for known artists has increased. Where are the numbers of the shows to see any local artists? Yet the up and coming artists have moved out, getting pushed from one town to another. As the hippies followed and the prices went up, they searched for other abandoned buildings, low rent districts, factories that haven't been turned into malls. The sign reads, "Let the arts live." What about the artists? Let's see here. This comes up, and I've done this with the band a couple times, and I guess I'll keep reading it and doing it because of our present situation. Again, here's a tip of the hat to all the young folks being out there, all the energy that's happening now. I hope that all this is really galvanizing people and turning something into, some major change that needs to be happening for a long time. Who's your captain? Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Some passengers below deck have been complaining that they're standing ankle deep, in water. Seems that people below deck are always complaining. The first official statement we're going to do a deep soaking of the rugs, a thorough cleaning. Sorry for any inconvenience, nothing to worry about. Go back to your room. Now that the water is lapping at your thigh, the lights have gone out, and the ship seems to be on its side, many of you are doubting some of the explanations, the official statements that everything is okay. In your hearts, you know that everything is not okay. As your captain, though, I just want to remind you that it's my job and I get paid to tell you everything is okay. Everything is okay. But as a humanitarian, I feel compelled to say, unofficially, of course, I would suggest swimming attire. And once in the water, I would look for anything that's still floating. Hold on. I know lifeboats would have been nice, but there were budget cuts, and lifeboats for the economy class were the first to go. But by the way, lifeboats for everybody was never the case. But as your captain, I want you to know I'm aware that the boat is on its side, and for that reason, I'm going ashore in one of the lifeboats left for me. I can guarantee you that everything is going to be okay as soon as I get to shore. I will talk to the company experts who know how to present the facts so that it's obvious to any jury that it was the passenger's fault. And as your captain, I can assure you everything is being done to protect the investors. Counter to the official statements that everyone has gone back to their rooms and waiting further instructions, many have fought their way to the main deck. Some have found life jackets, and everyone has jumped ship. For those waiting in your rooms, please remain calm. Practice holding your breath and await further instructions. And I think I'll just end with this one. Let's see here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lisa, for putting this together. I'll do this one. This will kind of wrap up the nature part, I guess. This is called Save Grandma. Thanks again, folks. Hope if you enjoyed what you saw here today, please tell people that there's 3 other days of great poets, great authors, all have been recorded. Today's been recorded to go back and listen to a lot of things that happen here. Thanks again to Northfield and to Lisa and all the sponsors who made this possible. It was an honor to be here. And I'll close out with Save Grandma. Grandma took me out to the swamps where Grandpa had gone missing mysteriously just a few days before. She came out to these swamps on a regular basis to catch frogs for her famous frog casserole. We arrived on a spot where she said we needed to wait. Suddenly, a frog leaped out of the water and attached itself to my bare leg. I screamed, and Grandma told me to be quiet as we watched it grow with each gulp of my blood. When it got to a certain size, Grandma she took out a small club and clubbed it off my leg into a basket. I looked on in disbelief. As this happened a few times, she explained these are the blood-sucking frogs that most people don't like, but they were the secret ingredient to her frog casserole. And her frog casserole won awards every year at the town fair. Now Grandma and the blood-sucking frogs were one for me. She was upset, though. She said to me that a few miles away, they were going to build one of those big malls that would probably be abandoned in a few years. There were laws to stop anyone from building on those wetlands. The mall was being built on the wetlands anyways, where the frogs gathered. Building the mall on the wetlands, some estimated hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of frogs would be killed. The scientists included complete extinction, since this was where the frogs mated. Grandma wanted me to fight against the mall, demanding that we save the blood-sucking frogs. I explained to Grandma, most people won't want to save blood-sucking frogs. They'll save dolphins, cute seals, or how about the majestic whales and elephants? She got distraught. What would life be without the social picnics and the frog casserole contest, which she won regularly? And Harold. Never heard of Harold before, but he was a farmer down the road. She said loved her frog casserole. Grandma pleaded, save the blood-sucking frogs. After brainstorming ideas, I created a marketing campaign. I tried to sell them as being cute, but nobody bought it. Having them as pets was a disaster. Showing them playing and sucking blood started a frenzy. The key, I realized, is people have to eat Grandma's casserole. Very few wanted to try it. I guess it's one of those things, if you haven't grown up eating it, you think it's weird. For me, it was Grandma holding that glass casserole dish with her big smile, giving me Grandma love, and knowing that the casserole was going to be delicious. Maybe if we all thought of it as saving Grandma, we could save the blood-sucking frogs. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Hope you enjoyed it. And keep writing, keep creating, and let's keep working for those future generations. Thanks a lot.